The site that would one day become Wellington Wells, a series of small islands in the Bristol Channel, has been inhabited since distant antiquity. A site said to have been born in great joy and merriment. Over the centuries, it was slowly built up, eventually formalized into the town and then city of Wellington Wells in the early 1800s. And for much of its history, it was little different to the other hamlets, villages, or small cities that dotted the coasts of Britain. But as all things tend to do, times change. The optimism of the Victorian age was swept away by continental troubles, first with growing industrialization, then the Great War, and more as the storms of a second Great War gathered. Initially, they fought with dogged determination, the brave flyers of the Royal Air Force beating back the German hordes, stifling and eventually defeating their invasion of Britain. Yet, by 1943, Britain remained isolated and alone, and the Germans returned in greater numbers. The defenses of city after city collapsed before their relentless assault, and not long after, Wellington Wells, like much of the country, was made to feel the weight of the German occupation. Under the command of a Colonel von Stauffenberg, an executive committee was established to ensure clear lines of communication between the occupying authority and the township. These collaborators worked diligently to ensure every whim of the Germans was carried out. To assist in these efforts, an individual by the name of Jack Worthing was made the voice of the occupying authority. And as the years wore on, the demands became greater. They demanded that the community send its farmers to Germany, that the community turn over its automobiles, that they and their fuel may be shipped across the sea. And at any point, should any brave or daring soul stand in defiance, those same collaborators and their neighbors, fearful of any potential reprisals, would take matters into their own hands, ensuring justice, or at least a facsimile of it, was carried out in their minds. By mid-1947, the war had turned against the Germans. With the Soviets gradually pushing west, the Executive Council was handed a new decree that all children under the age of 13 were to be handed over and dispatched to Germany proper. The exact reasons for this demand were never stated, never shared with the citizenry or the committee, and nevertheless the people complied. And when a handful dared resist, dared to try and burn the registry and protect the community's children, they were lynched by their peers, their bodies left hanging as a gesture of submission to the Germans. And as they sent their children away, most clung to some small hope that their children might return someday when the war ended. 2 years later, those hopes were dashed. No one who had been sent out was ever seen again. The guilt of what they had done settled upon the city and its inhabitants like a malignant fog. Efforts were made to rewrite history, rather than believe that the occupation's strength had been an illusion, and that the Germans had snuck away in the night. The remaining elements of the Home Army bullishly blustered of their heroic liberation of Wellington Wells. Yet not even these efforts could restore the pride or hope of the Britons. In the years and months that followed, this wallowing grew worse and worse, perhaps best exemplified by a series of brutal breeder riots, When some individuals dared have the gall to try and have children, when so many in the community had been forced to give up their own, they were set upon by their envious and hate-filled neighbors. This bloodshed fueled a desire by the new executive committee to find a solution. To that end, they enlisted a local scientist by the name of Harry Hayworth to develop and explore a potential chemical solution using leftover supplies of a German stimulant. By 1953, this chemical concoction, now known as Joy, passed its trials and began mass production. The chemical allowed the community to escape their past actions, living in a blissful ignorance, their euphoric state returning them to a simpler time, all the while impacting both their mental faculties and their physiology. Acting as a contraceptive, inducing auditory and visual hallucinations, and of course having an amnesiatic effect that proved useful in forgetting the past, but also introduced problems in the present. Forgetful idleness became quite common, and, in its most severe cases, resulted in a joy spiral, in which an individual could not remember taking their joy, so they would repeatedly consume the product, resulting in a euphoric overdose. Successful in its immediate goals, it proved a temporary reprieve. Between the extreme demand and the rapid consumption of the necessary ingredients, the community's capacity for producing the drug was anticipated to diminish in the near future. These projections led Dr. Hayworth to seek a more permanent solution, beginning by delving into the study of phrenology, a path of study which he would pursue for 3 years before being forcefully removed from his position, institutionalized and used as a test subject for future runs of Joy under the watchful eyes of a former employee known as Dr. Verloc. The relative success of Joy saw the executive committee take on more extreme efforts to enforce happiness upon the community, commanding that all citizens consume Joy, making Jack Worthing the voice and smiling face of Wellington Wells, his numerous shows an effort to make the public laugh and be calm, that everything would be okay. The committee engaged in historical revisionism, erasing all that might upset a fragile public. They also developed a means and methods to identify people who were refusing or simply forgot to take their joy. And to this end, a number of security points patrolled by officers supported by machine constructs known as spankers cropped up around the city. Still more, the committee pushed for a happy mask campaign, pushed that each citizen wear their white silicoid mask, having their face forcefully shaped into a perpetual smile. Even this was not enough for the city's leadership. They called upon a Dr. Faraday to take these masks to the next level, wanting her to introduce a system by which they could provide a mild shock to the pleasure centers of the brain, ensuring perpetual euphoria. The doctor, however, refused, perhaps in protest of the forced happiness of the community, or perhaps merely uninterested. Whatever the case may be, her decision saw her placed under house arrest. A surprisingly fortuitous decision by all accounts. In her quarantine, she continued her experiments, allegedly making contact with an alien world full of mechanical beings. Likely this was the source of the advanced technology she worked on. At the same time, this portal saw the emergence of an extraterrestrial crystal she dubbed the Omotaline. which spread across the city's underground. This crystal's incredible energy density saw her experiment with utilizing it as a power source, the success of which saw it becoming the standard energy supply for the city. As to those mechanical beings, she saw a hope for the city's future, for the effects of joy and its production were becoming more and more pronounced with the passing of each day. The consumption of joy was gradually eating away the public's capacity to engage in meaningful labor. Agricultural production floundered, and what little trade had existed with the mainland ceased, to say nothing of the environmental devastation being wrought by the production of joy. Chemicals dumped with near reckless abandon first made the city's rivers unsafe, but soon thereafter gave rise to an unhealthy fog and mutated fungal life. These conditions together resulted in the emergence of a plague, a disease that rendered its host unstable, deteriorated the Broca's area of the brain, and strangely resulted in many infected speaking in Old English. To contain this plague, several districts were placed under quarantine. Yet, whatever hope Dr. Faraday had for using these automechanicals were dashed in an apparent rebellion, though in truth these reports may be nothing more than delusions of some mad rambler high on their supply of joy, and perhaps shouldn't be taken all too seriously. Still, the city languished. Its leadership became increasingly incompetent. Hooked on joy, the committee neglected the city proper, with power more effectively being wielded by General Byng, the famed general who had overcome the German occupation and who oversaw the aging remnants of the Home Guard and their paranoid fear that the Germans would one day return. And Dr. Verloc, who oversaw Hayworth Labs and the production of joy. Within his lab, there was a growing discontentment. His lead researcher eventually broke ranks with Hayworth and took her research with her. This, combined with the exhaustion of the initial ingredients necessary to produce joy, resulted in an increasing number of bad batches. These tainted production runs not only failed to produce the euphoria of joy, but often resulted in unpredictable effects upon consumption. Anything from simple grogginess and terminal stupidity to downright insanity and a rewriting of the consumer's brain resulted in extreme paranoid delusions and an incapacity to consume joy and receive its euphoric effects ever again. As more and more workers consumed these poorly concocted batches, the number of downers and wastrels increased. Whether this was by choice or happenstance, the community's old memories began to return. Unwilling to accept what they had done, the community would chase these individuals out into parts of cities not touched since the end of the occupation. And those that they got their hands on were beaten, bloodied, or torn apart. As a result of these growing issues, Dr. Verloc promised those poor, unfortunate souls impacted by bad batches that they would be taken care of, when in truth, he saw them as nothing more than test subjects for his ideal, final, permanent solution. As this situation intensified, a young woman by the name of Victoria Byng, daughter of the famed general, was awoken from her joy-induced stupor to see the community as it really was, individuals slowly starving, sustaining themselves on charcoal, rodents, or anything else they could get their hands on, an increasing number of bodies lining the streets, and a plague spreading. Having borne witness, it was impossible for her to turn her back on what she had seen. She tried to call attention to the issue, but was rebuked by the city's leadership, who were hesitant to make the public aware of the truth, believing that they would kill each other in their desperation to secure the city's last remaining food supplies. Determined to awaken the public, she attacked the means by which joy was distributed, preventing the resupply of mood booths across the city before attacking the city's water supply. Her actions forced people into withdrawal, their dire situation returning memories and a desperate broadcast of Jack warning the people of the impending collapse saw the populace rise in open rebellion. Verloc mobilized the city's police and doctors to force an immediate return to the consumption of joy, while General Bing retreated to a secret bunker, stocked with hoarded foodstuffs. With the riots spreading, Victoria turned her sights on the last source of joy in the city, Hayworth Labs. Her efforts saw the facility destroyed. In the end, the city streets were clogged with bodies, police, doctors, and numerous citizens, some overcome by the violence, others incapable of living with themselves as the memories returned. Their happy mask discarded, forced to see the world as it was and be seen by their peers. The buildings were left in ruin, and those few survivors can only look forward to the hauntings of their past, and perhaps some small hope that in the future, far away from the decaying ruins of Wellington Wells, that they might be able to move on, to find a peace with their past actions.